What was the biggest challenges you faced during your competitive career?
I mean, the biggest one was my father dying in Barcelona. To recover from that and become some sort of a human afterwards.
Hey guys, Dave Loshelder here, Dadbod Judo. Hey, we're back on the podcast. I have a special guest today, one of my favorite judo players ever, Jason Morris. If you don't know who he is, then you're living under a rock. Four-time Olympian, 92 silver medalist in the Olympics, 93 world's bronze medal, multinational champion. I grew up with this guy and watched him kind of beat everybody. So it's an honor to have you on the podcast, Jason. Thanks for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Dave. Good to see you.
Hey, man, well, I want to get into it because I am really, really curious. The one thing that I'm really curious about is just anybody at the top level for a long time, especially with your career being so consistent and, not to mention your wrestling career, being All-American from Syracuse and then the international judo player and being at the top level. I'm always curious about like the mental toughness of it, the mental strategies, the physical training, what does it really take to make an Olympic athlete and what types of things, kind of like bring that. But I just want to just use those as topics and then we can just kind of talk about anything you want to as well in terms of your school and, your coaching and your training. So I kind of leave this open, just kind of more of a BS session to kind of get kind of pick your brain and also talk about what you want to talk about as well. What's going on in your life in judo right now?
Right this second, we just had a group of kids fight at the Pan Am Championships, which is very important these days. Back in our day, it was the Pan Am Games that meant more. Mm-hmm. Now the Pan Am Championships has to do with the world ranking list. So the kids can earn real important points to qualify for the Olympics and Worlds. Mm-hmm. So the kids just came back from Brazil. Some did well, some didn't do so great. They all fought well, great experience. As you know, being a competitor yourself, everything is a building block, absolutely everything. Every day in training, every competition is a step forward. It's really just an opportunity to continue to gather information to improve. It's always about getting better from start to finish. In fact, I'm going to go a little left here. I was very proud of one of my kids that she was very engaged when I was having a conversation with one of the other kids about strategy after the tournament. And it was showing her growth since the years she's been here. She basically was a beginner when she got here. And you just keep learning as you get better. And you don't realize it when you're starting that there's just so much to learn. You keep learning. And she was engaged, and that made me proud.
It's so funny about the learning, because I was even talking to my kid's 11. He's really into it now. And
what's his name?
Noah. Yeah, he's so actually I was thinking what I would, in terms of like getting him exposure to other judo players, I thought about your club and Jimmy's club and just kind of like, get him into like some really good coaching. So that's kind of my
send him up.
One of my
Come on up, Dave.
Up, it's only a car drive away, man. You don't live that far away. But yeah, and I was like, man, I was like, listen, I was like, I'm doing the same throw that I did when I first started when I was 9 years old. I mean, it's like we keep doing the same throw, keep learning the same thing, or learning more about, whatever it would be, and it's still the basics are still the basics, and you still learn more. And it's incredible. So take me back to when you started, because I don't know your history in terms of when you first started, how old you were, what got you into it, what types of things like really got you into judo and subsequently wrestling.
For me, I think I was watching the show Kung Fu. You remember this Kung Fu with David Carradine?
Oh yeah.
So I think I was into that. And then I came home with a flyer. It was a judo demonstration. But at that time, when I was 8 years old, you have no idea. I don't know what the difference, right? It's like a martial art. So I brought home the flyer to my mother, and there was a local YMCA right 2 miles from me that had a judo demonstration. So we went. I saw what judo was, guys flipping through the air. The second I saw that, I was like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. I want to try this stuff. So I happened to be, I think I was already swimming at that Y. So I went from swimming to judo. And once I won my first trophy, and it was a local, in-house club tournament type thing, but at that time it felt like the Olympics for me, right?
Yeah.
Once that happened, I was stuck to judo.
Who was the instructor? You remember?
Yeah, my first instructor was a guy named Warren Harris. His origins are from now you wouldn't know, but every pocket has their every pocket of our country has their origins and all their major clubs that spawned everybody. So the major club around here was the Troy Judo Club, and Warren was from that. And so he was running a small program in Glenville, New York, which is probably 30 minutes away from Troy. I don't know how he came to start that program, but Warren Harris was his name.
So when was the moment where you said to yourself, I want to be an Olympian someday. I want to be a world champion. I want to be an Olympian. When was that moment where you're like, man, I feel it?
So interesting for me, it wasn't that. Everything to this point has been an organic flow. It seems, meaning I didn't have that watershed moment. Oh, I want to be an Olympian, because when you're young, you don't even know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
You see TV, you see this, you see that, and I'm a huge sports fan. So I was watching tennis, football, basketball, you name it. I just enjoyed the grind of training. And whatever I was doing at the time, it was swimming and judo until I was about 13, where I had to pick one or the other because it was getting serious in both. Mm-hmm. There's like, if I was telling your kid doing other sports is a good thing, trying lots of stuff, because every sport is good for each other. But at some point, if you are getting really good at something, you're going to have to, if you're a guitar player, you're going to have to concentrate on playing guitar every day, all day, 6 hours a day, whatever that takes. You're not going to be fooling around with other things. So anyway, I chose judo. I think because swimming is hard. And you're inside your own head most of the time. It's like running, right? You can't joke with your friends. There's not much of a social aspect to it while you're training. In judo, you have your 5, 6, 7 minute rounds, and then you can interact at least, right? Mm-hmm. There's some interaction with your teammates, your opponents, whatever. There's some social, and I think that was the catalyst for me. I remember in swimming, one practice when we were on a break, and I was just BSing with my teammate, and the coach yelled at me. And I'm like, what I can't even talk to the guy, now I think I was 13. I said, okay, that in general, okay, I'll just lean toward judo, because I was a good swimmer too. I mean, at the time I was probably as good at both.
Oh, wow.
So I chose judo. And from then you just keep going. I competed almost every weekend, because that's just something that was in our mechanism. We just kept going to tournaments. I don't think I remember going, looking at schedules and figuring out, we got to go to this and this to qualify for this and that and the other thing. It's just, you just keep competing. Next thing you know, you're on a team that goes somewhere, and then you're at the junior worlds. And at the time, you don't really know what it means. Mm-hmm. And then as you keep going, I didn't just all of a sudden make the Olympic team, but it was organic from the beginning to once we started into qualifying, and to me understanding what it actually meant. So the answer is, I didn't have a watershed moment. I want to be an Olympian. I just kept getting better and better and better. You win certain things, which leads to another thing. You win another thing, it leads to another thing.
In your younger days, were there a lot of training camps, like international training camps you went to? When did you first go to Japan? When did you go to Europe?
So the international stuff started early in Canada. So there was camps in Canada, and I don't remember how we found that out or knew that existed. I think just from you've been there, you go to nationals, you go to this, you go to that, junior nationals, you start meeting people, mm-hmm. and you just learn the community. So I started going to Canada in different spots. And back then it was different than it is now. Now they have a one training center. Back then there was just lots of different opportunities.
Mhm.
Like here, there's just stuff going on everywhere. I just happen to connect with those. And I live, I mean, logistically, I live 3 hours from Montreal. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So I think that started maybe 13, that kind of stuff. The more international training started maybe 14, 15, in that range. I mean, remember, we're still at school. I'm not homeschooled or anything. So you can't just skip school for weeks on end and go to Japan.
Right.
I mean, you could, but it's easier now than it was then.
Hmm.
With all your technologies, right?
Yeah.
So the international stuff came 15, 16, 17 in that range.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, but we at the Olympic Training Center, we were at a camp. A few of us were in the room, and you were expressing something about that in your weight class. You know where you were with that. No, it was actually kind of interesting. I was like, and I think you're a tad bit older than me, but not that much. So, and
Do you remember what year that was around?
oh man, it had to be in the 80s.
I think the first time I went to the training center, I was 13. So it was an 80. There was some camp.
How old are you?
57.
Okay, I'm 53. So
It was later.
yeah, it must have been later. It had to be because I must have been at least 13, 14. Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah, if I remember right, and if my memory serves me, I remember we were at the same training camp. What was the hardest training camp you've ever been to?
I mean, where I got really good training was different pockets, and it all depended on who was there, when I was there, who I was training for. I mean, once you get up to the high levels, you're specific training for certain guys. So I don't think there was a section of hardest training camp, but I could tell you some of the good camps that I would go to. And one of the best camps to go to is still the same now is the French Open camp, because then you get a lot of the guys stay. So you're getting to touch all your competitors that fought in the tournament.
So the French guys.
Well, not the French guys, but that camp, because after you fight in the tournament, many of the top guys are still sticking around for that camp because they're sticking around for the next tournament, which is in Germany. So you get to touch, whether you go out in the first round or you win the tournament, you get to touch a lot of your competitors, because that's a key, is being able to get your hands on the guys you're going to compete against, not just train with randos that you'll never touch. I mean, you got to do that too to sharpen your game. But the name of the game for Americans anyways, because we don't get to touch those guys very often, is to touch them.
The kind of the evolution of American Judo. What do you think is the good and the bad now? Because I think there's been a change and kind of a passing of the torch, I think, in some ways with American Judo, considering that the older guys are retiring, and kind of our generation's kind of moving into the leadership positions in terms of that. Where do you think we are now?
So just in general, there's just less participation. There's less clubs. There's less than the 80s, certainly. And that's simply because there's more stuff out there.
Mm-hmm.
And we have not done, I wouldn't say we've done a great job, me, you included, all of us included, keeping judo in the US vernacular. Mm-hmm. Judo now is, I got to look underneath my carpet to find the word judo, as opposed to gymnastics or basketball or even jujitsu, wrestling. These words bring the people to your dojo. Mm-hmm. Judo, wow, what? Judo? What in the hell is judo? You know, that kind of thing now. So there's not any one watershed moment where we started fading, but we just have been fading since the beginning. Since when we were the only game in town in the 70s, there was no anything else. Judo was it. We were in movies. Judo was it. Bruce Lee and the fighting came in, and then continued with lots of stuff. And then just in general, the high school, not the high school, excuse me, the school sports, there's everything you can name is in the schools that aren't necessarily Olympic sports. They're just stuff that kids do. And then if a parent does it, right, the only reason you're going to introduce your kid to judo is because you were in judo. I just had a conversation with my with my doctor, and I think I insulted him because I kind of crapped on baseball because he's a baseball guy. And I'm like, oh my God, will you please try judo? You know, you're in town with one of the top judo programs in the whole country. At least you got to try it. Right. But he did baseball. So his kids are doing baseball.
Right.
And I crapped on baseball. I think he got mad.
You're gonna watch those baseball guys. They're real sensitive. That's true. I mean, you know, we never had the numbers that Europe has, or obviously, you know, like if you go to Europe, I think it's been, I think the stat was, at least back in a few years ago, was judo was the second most participated sport next to soccer in Europe. Like that's like
I think that's a stat around the world. That was a stat worldwide. Yep. I don't know if it's true anymore.
Yeah, I don't know either. I did hear that kind of when we were doing it, we were training and stuff and competing. You would go to a camp and it'd be 300 people on the mat. So tell me about your program. What makes it special? What, you know, why do you do it? What types of things are there?
I think it was again, this was an organic progression. I didn't know that I was going to do this club or program from the beginning. It just kind of evolved as need arose. People wanted it, that were close to me, encouraged me to start things. So I started things slowly. I developed a kid pretty quickly. You probably remember Carrie Chandler. Does that name ring a bell? Yeah. So I had her for she was a white belt. I had her for 6 months, and she took third at 57 kilos at the nationals. And back then the nationals was quite tough in that weight class. So that kind of stuff showed me early on that, oh, I can do this and do it well. So if anybody steps through my door, because of my, what I've learned as a player, how in depth that I trained, what to do, what not to do, what to create, what not to create. And I had success early on, right away. So I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'll do this. So it just continued to develop. I started in my house. I had a dojo in my house, basically. It's a little more elaborate than that if you saw the pictures, because I built an addition to the house. Anyways, but it outgrew that quickly. We bought this building that we're in now, that what you see now. This is just an office in the building that we're doing this little podcast. So we bought this, and then it grew from there. But I've found out early on that I could take any kid, plug them into my program, no matter how lazy, as long as they show up, they're going to learn they're going to build their toolbox. And that's basically what we don't get a lot of in general. Even back in our day, you just get thrown out there, randori, and see how you do, right? Basically, you're not really being educated in the game, in having a good infrastructure. Infrastructure is the word. You know, all around, standing, newaza, all of it. So that what we do here, and because I'm able to, I'm very fortunate that I'm able to be here. We have 9 sessions a week. Doesn't mean you have to come to all 9, but I'm on the mat all the time. So I just keep personally improving. I haven't been stagnant like most, because it's just like music, right? Your music taste stops at the 80s, and then that's all you do is listen to hair metal, for example, or not even new hair metal. It's you're still listening to Ronnie James Dio, and that's it, right? So, but even in that, for me, I'm always listening to new music, that not new genres, but new of the music that I like. So I'll find some 80s bands, 90s bands that I've never heard of, but it's new to me. So I'll listen. That's my point is that we keep going, we keep evolving, we keep learning. And my passion is still to my detriment sometimes because I'm not making a ton of money. I probably could make a lot more money if I was a little bit more, not as passionate for developing these kids. Because the passion and the time you put into a kid to get elite takes a ton. Just one kid, just one, takes a ton of effort, emotional headspace. Whereas I could use that to do 1,000 demos and get more people in here and just make money. So it's a balance. And my wife, Terry Takamori, and I are basically a two-man band. So it's not like there's this whole mechanism like a high school sport where you have booster clubs, all kinds of parents care about it massively for the 2 years that their kid is involved. And then lots of stuff can happen, right? Here, you've been what was your dojo again?
Hills. I grew up at South Hills Judo Club in South Hills of Pittsburgh.
Who's your coach?
Nick Safuto and Colleen Murphy.
Colleen, I know Colleen, right?
Yeah. Yeah, she was pretty involved with, like, she was Maurice's coach, Marisa Vadola. Remember her?
Yeah, of course.
Because I trained with Marisa. We were training partners for a long time. We trained together, but then they closed down the club, and then I stopped doing judo for a little bit. I started having kids and things like that, and then when my kids got older, I got back into it. So now I'm really back into it big time. So
awesome. Well, then
I'm a Kim's.
Then I'm going to be seeing you soon.
Yeah, most likely. Yeah.
Well, if you want to do this thing right, get your butt up here at least to check it out.
I'm planning on it, man. I'm excited. I really am. My kid's really excited about it. He's really into it, and he's having a good time with it. So as long as he's motivated and he's into it, then I want to give him the opportunities to, and get him around good people, great coaches that could, help him develop too. So because I know that's key. Like we talk about, it's the who you train with, good people, knowledgeable people. It's so important. So, okay, so let's talk about strategy, man. You're talking about how you develop your people. So, it sounds like a very strong curriculum that you've built. How does that play into developing an athlete into an elite athlete?
Well, in the beginning, it means nothing. You got to develop your fundamental toolbox. Got to learn how to shoot the basketball. You got to learn how to do all your things properly. And consistency is key. The kids aren't showing up enough. Strategy means nothing. Right. We often love to move past the process. I'm looking at Nicole. We like to move past the process. Move past the process and get the answer. Right?
Nicole moves past the process.
Oh, I'm perfect.
they all at one, myself included, yourself included, we all want results and often we, especially after a depressing practice or a loss or a down in your headspace during a week, during a training, during a competition. Oh, what's the answer? What can I do to all of a sudden become not having this feeling? But there is none. There's zero. It's process. You have to always go back to the process. And the more the kids learn that, the more they can build their toolbox, build their infrastructure. And then when they're continuing to compete, then there is strategies depending on each kid, because every kid is different. Even as basically as right, left, right? There's the right, left thing. And then every division is different. And each weight class is different. Each one of these kids has a different toolbox, a different set of where they are. So I had 7 kids on this Pan Am team, all completely different in levels of things that they were at. Some were just coming off injuries. Some are further along in their progression. So getting prepared for this was quite challenging because you still have to prepare, even though you might not be ready to win, but you try to prepare to win. You're always going to win. So, and it's a lot easier today to at least view your competition because it's right there on YouTube.
Mhm.
Back in our day, it was word of mouth,
Yeah.
right? If you were lucky to get a video of a guy at that level.
Mhm.
So now it's easier to figure out at least what the other person has and how what you have at this current time matches what you can do. And so that's the challenge, because you can't just all of a sudden, if I don't have a left layup, I can't just go in the game and do it. I have to create that. So I can only do what I can do at the current time when I'm competing. So that is always a challenge with a lot of these kids, because they're already able to go on the bigger events, be on the tour. Now we call it the tour, but that doesn't mean you've made anything. So there's a lot of confusion sometimes. Not my kids, because I'm pretty good at keeping them in reality checks, because it's not magic. There's no magic. You're not going to just show up to a tournament because you can and win. Because the competition is, it's just like, it's the same as if you went to Wimbledon and thought you were going to hang with Roger Federer just because you own a tennis racket. Not going to happen. I don't know if do you know who Roger Federer is?
Oh yeah, yeah, big tennis
Okay.
fan.
Oh, you're a tennis guy? Oh, awesome.
Yeah, big tennis fan. Yeah, it's I used to, well, I used to follow it a lot more back when, Agassi and Sampras would play, and all those guys, because they're like exactly the same age as we are. So how do you approach the mental preparation and focus before major competition for your kids, or even when you were, before the Olympics, when you were competing?
It's all about prep. It's all prep. The more prep, the more confidence, the more game can be added. It's all about preparing, and it's an everyday thing. You can't take a day off.
So what you're saying is, like, believing in your training, you're consistent, you're doing the right things, and all that is going to lead to positive kind of mindset and have the confidence to be able to kind of say, okay, I can do this. At the top level, everyone's doing about the same. Everyone's training really hard, and they're
Well, it's about smarter, not harder at that level. In any sport, right? It's the top tennis guys all have it in here.
Mhm.
Between Djokovic, Fed, Nadal, those guys are another level in their brain. But that's all coming from their prep, the techniques that they've developed, and then all the years of scheduling, like you said, eating, depending on what coaches they've been with. I mean, those guys train like, those three train harder than anybody.
Mhm.
So learning how to be a professional is part of this.
Mhm.
And we're in judo, it's not out there. It's not, you can't see it, right? You can watch LeBron James and go, wow, this guy's, he's an amazing athlete, an amazing athlete. He didn't get like that by magic. I mean, common sense tells you that this guy has done the most he could to get the most out of what he is.
Mhm.
But in judo, you can't see that. You watch a couple YouTube videos, you don't know what's behind that. And judo is very, very different in the fact that you're not you're not competing against an apparatus. You're competing against a person that doesn't want to get
Mhm.
thrown or pinned or whatever. So there's just so many variables. So training smart, and you're talking about athletic ability too. There's limits of, because judo and along with many other sports is such a feel.
Mhm.
So if you don't feel that thing right in a certain moment, you're not going to get that throw or get that groundwork move. Some have better feel than others. Some are just better than others.
So what was the biggest challenges you faced during your competitive career?
I mean, the biggest one was my father dying in Barcelona. To recover from that and become some sort of a human afterwards. because my dad was the most important part of my existence at that point. Just, he managed me. He didn't train me in judo. He wasn't one of those dads, but he did everything he could to finance me, promote me, make sure that I had what I needed to be a professional. So when he passed, picking the pieces up from that, and I mean, I was only 25, so I still had another 8 years to go. I didn't plan on that. It just, again, organically continued on.
Take me through that.
So I competed July 30th, I believe. And we won the medal, enjoyed the interviews and the festivities after, watched my competitor, not my competitors, my teammates compete for the rest of the games. The games goes one division a day. Well, two really, men and women. So, but it lasts 7 days. So you're there for all that. Then I flew home about 8 or 9 days later to this Olympians White House event where the U.S. Olympians get to go to the White House, the president. It's a really nice event. And so I got a call when I was actually at Terry's house, because her mom lives, or she's from the DC area, Alexandria. So that's where the event was in DC. So I was staying with Terry. And I got a call from Barcelona because my dad stayed to go to the closing ceremonies. And I don't know exactly where he was, what exactly was happening, but he was alone, and he had a heart attack, according to whoever's telling me this. And it was in broken English. Back in you remember 92. We're not today. I'd get on the Zoom call with somebody and they could probably show me what was going on, right?
Yeah.
Or FaceTime. So I get that information. And at the time, for me, my whole world just collapsed. So I wasn't into doing much. I missed many opportunities to build my brand. This is the funny and ironic part of my dad dying. At that time, he worked so hard on building my brand himself, me doing what I'm supposed to do is compete. And I wasn't into all that, interviews and promotion and stuff. I just did what he told me. I learned how to do a lot of stuff because of what he did, but I wasn't really into that then. He took care of all that stuff. So I missed out on a lot of opportunities to create buzz about Jason Morris. And in the States, you got about 2 seconds to hit when your name is fresh. And I mean, I don't think I brought my head out of water because there was quite a bit to deal with. If you ever lost, do you still have your parents?
My mom passed.
There you go. So a lot to do, right? Depending on how old you were, what's going on in her existence, a lot to do. So the least thing that I was worried about was my judo career and my fame. I was worried about taking care of my dad's stuff. He had a theatrical lighting business that I had to run. It was quite involved. So I basically disappeared for 6 months minimum.
Yeah, right after that. And so after the 6 months, what happened?
So he died in the summer. The next world trials were in February. And back then the trials were always in Colorado. I hadn't done a lick of judo, not an uchikomi, a throw, nothing since Barcelona. But for some reason, I was quite good at scheduling and foreshadowing what's, big picture, always with the big picture. So I thought, okay, well, and this is a conversation with myself. I had no guidance at that point, real guidance. My dad was my was my guidance, and any other guidance would have been people of my peer group, which isn't always the best, right? Listen to, so if you and I are in a bathroom and we're talking, I'm not necessarily going to get the best advice from Dave. So I had a conversation with myself, because there's an obvious point where I was like, okay, I'm done with judo. I can't do it without my dad. I don't want to. But, you know, you go through a million emotions. And I figured, okay, well, I'm going to go to the trials. I was still on weight, probably because of stress. But I was like, okay, well, I'll keep my nose in the game, try to see if I can win the trials, because that would give me. So back then, they usually had the trials about 4 to 6 months before the Worlds or Olympics or Pan Ams, whatever it was. So that would give me a stay of execution for another 6 months. So I figured, okay, let me do the trials. No judo, zero. But the training, and like I was talking earlier before, the infrastructure in my game and in my judo was so strong up until that point that I was able to, the training to Barcelona held. So yeah, I wasn't as fit, judo fit, but I did activities all day long. You know, I shoot hoops, play tennis. I'm a sports person. I stay active. So I wasn't completely a couch potato, but I wasn't judo fit. So I just gave it a shot. Luckily won the trials. Again, like I said, that gave me a stay of execution. Still wasn't in the mindset of doing any training until maybe once the reality set that, oh my God, I'm actually going to go to a Worlds. Not, you know, again, without my dad, without the proper prep, but I made the team. So, geez, when did I start training again? It was maybe 2 months before, maybe. Yeah, it was crazy. Just, I mean, because I was still dealing with the thing, the very difficult part was I was trying to sell. I decided at that point too that I was going to sell my father's business, and I'm a 25-year-old sportsman. All I cared about were girls, sports, and rock and roll. That's my thing, not business. I didn't know the first thing about my dad's business, and certainly not the business side of the business. You know, he did. I could go into what the business was, but I had no idea how to sustain that business. So I was like, okay, the wise move here, again, conversation with myself, big picture, is try and sell this business. And that was a full-time job, keeping that running. So there was no opportunity for training, and certainly not in my area, because, you know, you can't train in your area at this level. You got to be at all these other international camps, basically where the guys are. They're not in upstate New York.
Right.
So to maintain anything would be very minimal at best. You know, local judo guys who are awesome. You need those guys, but they're not going to give you what you would need to compete at the Worlds and be competitive. So I wasn't able to gear back up until maybe 2 months before. It might even be less than that, now that I'm thinking about it. But again, I think the training up until that point, again, the infrastructure, my judo was very, very sound at that point. And somehow I was just trying not to get hurt at the 93 Worlds, but somehow organically go match by match, keep winning. Oh my God, I'm in the, oh wow, I'm in the bronze medal match. Oh, here we go, right? So somehow that transferred, all the training before that transferred. So I was not judo fit super the way I had been, but my judo IQ was extremely high. So I was able to manage what I did have, the fitness that I did have, the techniques that I did have. And I mean, I know my division inside and out. So I know these guys inside and out. Doesn't mean I'm going to beat them, but I know how my game fits with all my competitors by that point, by that stage of my, of the career. You just know your guys so thoroughly.
Mhm.
So that's what got me through to 93.
So, well, I mean, were you like shocked that you took third? Was it like, I can't believe it, or?
Well, so I had taken in the conditions, I was very pleasantly surprised that I was able to do that. But I took it in my head as payback for, I took fifth in the worlds twice. You know, I was in the bronze medal match 2 times, and I felt at the both times that I had unfavorable calls and decisions. So I was like, okay, this is just payback for that. So because I wasn't at my best, but somehow I managed to get a medal when I thought I deserved a medal in 87, 88, and 89.
Mm,
So I just back ended it. I got it in 92 and 93 instead of those first 3.
that's amazing. That's a remarkable story. Knowing that you weren't really training at all, which is incredible, and then had to like ramp up your conditioning within a couple months to basically, it was just like a couple training camps and you were good to go.
I mean, I wouldn't say I was good to go. It was more of a, okay, I'm here. I made the team. I'm not going to back out.
Mhm.
I'm going to give it a go, even though I'm nowhere near. Kind of like, I don't know if you remember Roger Federer coming back, and he was only back for like barely a couple months after his knee surgery. He won the Australian Open, and he beat Nadal in the final. It was kind of like that. Like, you know, I mean, his game is there, and he could do it at any given time. I mean, the block that he was out wasn't long enough for him to just drop off the face of the earth.
Mhm.
So that's why I felt mine as well. I wasn't just completely dead, but I definitely wasn't anywhere near as my technique wasn't anywhere near as sharp as, you know, you compare yourself to yourself, not your opponents. So it was nowhere near as sharp as it had been. And the fitness thing, Nicole, the fitness thing is a ton of mindset.
Mm,
The desire to win and the desire to compete and be successful while you're out there can push you past your physical limits so far.
mm,
Even when you can't lift your arm up, you somehow can because you want it so bad in that moment.
mm.
So that's also another, I'm pivoting a little bit because that judo fitness is a ongoing conversation with a lot of my kids, because their game is so much, a lot of their kids' games are better than I ever had. The game itself, with all the techniques that these kids know, the kids that I teach, because I'm teaching them not just my stuff, but I'm teaching them the whole game, right? To fit their body. But to know that they can push past, and you got to want it, and you have to experience it. It doesn't just happen. You have to experience it one time to figure, oh, I can go past this moment. Oh, I can do this. Oh, I can't even stand up, but I want it. This girl's dying too, or this guy is dying too. And it's equal. It's not like that you're the only one that's tired.
Yeah.
So figuring out how to push past that. You know, we've had, I mean, Jimmy Pedro is a great example. I mean, that guy was fit, but he wasn't the best judo player, but he wanted it so bad that he ground guys into dust because of his desire, even if he was tired.
Mhm.
I mean, that's just the way he trained. But you got to train your brain, and you got to be in those positions over and over, and not just in judo. I'm like that in anything. I'm like that now in pickleball. When I play pickleball, I mean, I'm dead, but I want to win more than I'm dead.
Mhm.
So even though I'm toast, I'm still gonna give that effort. I'm still gonna, because I want to win. I do not like the feeling of losing. And performing well is not an option. Okay, great. Just like LeBron James just said it, I'm not in it for participation trophies.
Mhm.
You know, the Lakers just lost. They played well in that series. The two games were real close against they're not number one seed. The Nuggets are 2 or 3, but they're one of the top teams, and they got by the Lakers in close games. But LeBron said, close games, loss is a loss.
Mhm.
Okay, I want to win. I don't like that feeling, the loss thing. I forgot what your question was, but
No, no, it's exactly because as you were talking, I was thinking like, what do you say to yourself to keep yourself, yeah, because I've known you for a long time. You're probably one of the most competitive persons I've ever met, right? So, and that shows in all your success with judo and wrestling and everything else. But you're saying something to yourself that other people usually don't. So,
so that's a great question, and that's exactly it. So I've always been a thinker on the competitive field, meaning I'm using my brain. I think I'm one of the more okay, not intelligent. My IQ for sports is extremely high, and I'm tapping that all the time. What adjustments to make, what to do, and I'm always thinking. And it's an ongoing, absolutely, and that's something that it's hard to teach, but you talk it out. You talk it out to your kids. Yeah, yes, you have to talk to yourself all the time when you're out there, because okay, I'll give you an example. I have students. I ask, okay, they start the match. What happened? In this exchange, what were you thinking? I don't know. How do you not know? How'd you score? I don't know. What were your thoughts all the way through the match? I don't know. So the match starts and the match ends, and they're not. It's a chaotic blur to them, and that can happen. It's happened to me before, but it's a conscious effort to continually, and then you make it habit. You it's just like everything in life. You've got to make good habits. So the talking to yourself, rewinding what is going on, figuring out what is happening while it's happening
Mhm.
is a challenge. That was, for me, it was one of my best attributes. Better than my Uchi Mata, better than my Osoto, was my brain. How to negotiate all these situations. So I don't know if you've got the chance to see me compete a lot, because again, it was back then there was no video, but I won a ton of international matches, a ton, from behind, getting down early, getting a BS penalty, having to recover from that, because it's not just my fitness, it's my brain, right? That guy's dying too. I might be dying, but he's dying too. I want it more than him, and I have a higher IQ. What to do when? So, but you got to talk to yourself,
Mhm.
and doing that is something that can absolutely be learned, but it has to be continually communicated. And that was for me. I would think that was my strongest. It still is. I'm always communicating with myself, like I'm talking to myself inside my head while I'm talking to you on my response. It's a constant voice negotiating the difficult points in every situation, not just matches, right? You're training too.
Well, it also sounds, it sounds the pragmatic, analytical, the desires there, the feelings there, where you're like, losing's like it's a bad feeling, so I don't want to feel that. Winning's way more. So you have that motivation, but then you also couple it with the intelligence, but being mindful of like where you are in space and where you are in the match. And then you're able to say, okay, analytically, what do I need to do strategically? What do I need to do to beat this guy? I already got the motivation. Like I'm doing this. Like this is going to happen, and I'm not losing. Like and that keeps you going. And people will have that, and they can fight themselves into a tiz and still lose. It's not
Absolutely.
married.
Good point. Yep. That's a good point. And that's part of your preparation and your infrastructure in your actual game. What do I have? Do I have that backhand down the line? If I haven't practiced that to a T, it doesn't exist in my game. So I don't have that option. So better prep for not only your infrastructure for yourself, then you take that prep and you apply it to each singular opponent. It's just it's not a wing it. I'm just going to go out there and hope, which is most of the kids that do it right now, because you don't know what you don't know.
Mhm.
And because you can in USA Judo, we do, meaning I can go to the French Open with very little qualifications. So I do. It's cooler to go 0-1 in France than it is to go 2-2 in Dallas. Right? Nothing's changed since our day.
Yeah.
It's cool to do that, but who wants to do the other thing? Not many.
Yeah. Well, if you go 0-1 in France, you can at least get to see the Eiffel Tower.
I guess if you care about that. So you circle to a thing that it's funny that a lot of people think that it's very glamorous to travel, and it absolutely is, but it's lost on me because I just do not care about that stuff. I just never cared about that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, we're doing the trip to the Eiffel Tower. Oh, okay, sure. Take the obligatory photos. Let me get out of here so I can just chill and relax and get ready to game plan and do what I got to do for my either training camp or tournament. I remember one time it was actually in France when I got stuck in and it was our coach. I remember the coach. I'm not going to say his name. He took us out on something and we ended up walking forever. We got lost, and then I was absolutely toast for our next training. I wanted to kill this guy because I did not care about any of the things that we were doing. I didn't enjoy any of it. And, generally when you're on the road, you're mindful of your weight. So you're not enjoying the fare like a vacation, right? You can stop at every restaurant and everything and have coffee and this and that. So you're dying. And then you're just walking and walking. When you're in Europe, you're walking, right? To see all the stuff going up and down stairs. And it was the whole day. And when practice came around, I was just toast. I don't remember getting killed in the practice, but I'm sure at least mentally I was absolutely out of it. So anyways, the point is that, yeah, go see the Eiffel Tower. Not for me.
My dad just say, you go to these different cities and fight in these tournaments, and he goes, you saw those cities, but you spent your whole weekend in the gymnasium, and then you flew out and went back home to Pittsburgh. Yeah, that's about right.
That's pretty much it. You're just seeing insides of gyms.
Yeah, and you kind of alluded to this a little bit, but looking back, what advice would you give, or do you give to your players who dream of reaching an Olympic stage, world championship, things like that?
Consistency. Show up. That's it.
Mhm.
Because everything else comes from that. It's all noise if you give them, you try to hype them in any other way. Because like you said, yeah, I want it. And I say this line all the time. There's a cartoon strip. It's like The Far Side. You ever see The Far Side?
Yeah.
Comic strip. So there's two guys, and they have those like little booths, right? And on front it says, "Who wants to win?" And the line in that booth is out the door. And there's a guy next to him with the booth says, "Who's willing to do what it takes to win?" And he's like this. The line's empty because
Yeah.
everybody wants to win. That's all noise, every bit of it. even to yourself. I mean, that's something else you have to tell yourself. I'm talking a lot of BS. I have tons of kids that say they want to be an Olympian. I go, okay, what are you willing to do?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is not much. They don't say that.
Mm-hmm.
Your actions, the actions speak. It's simple. I don't make the rules. You can hate me, and often the kids do, because I'm telling them stuff they don't want to hear. You got to do this. You got to do that. I don't make that rule. If you don't do this, this other guy is doing it,
Mm-hmm.
or this other girl is doing it. Okay, who's going to win? The other person that's doing that. I don't make that rule.
Yeah.
So show up, consistency. That's the start of all of it. And then there's a million things after that advice, but wherever you are in the world, in the country, show up. You got to show up.
You know, and it kind of leads me, and it almost like answers the question, like, you know, what types of things kind of made you who you are from judo?
So I don't know if this is the answer to that specific question, but I used to have almost panic attacks if I was injured or I missed the training, because I always, and I remember when this started really was when I was competing against a guy named Variev from Russia. And we were basically 1 and 2 in the world in general. I mean, you could throw a few other guys in there, but for a good 4 or 5 year period, it was us two. And if I was not able to train properly, I was freaking out because I knew that he was training and he was getting better. So I would lose ground.
Mm.
That was a motivation to keep every day, not, there's no day that I'm sitting on my ass doing nothing. I might just go play tennis, but you're doing something. So if there was a situation, and it happens, and every athlete gets injured. Hopefully, it's not like surgery injury, because that takes obviously a longer period. But if there was injuries that happened during training, I was in a panic attack mode, anxiety. Oh man, Variev's getting better. I'm not. That was a problem for me. That was my inner motivation. Not just this guy, but the fact that I'm not improving, because the idea is always get better every day, no matter what you're doing. So I did one of these podcasts earlier. Hopefully this one's better than that one. And the next one hopefully will be better than this one. It's always a challenge to yourself to get better, not just to show up. I want to just be there and see the Eiffel Tower.
Okay, so that brings me to role models and who you inspired to be. Who are the people that you looked up to in your career as a young judo player? Said, man, I want to be like him.
So back in our day, it was harder to know people, right? There's not really a magazine. There's nothing for judo. It's just being in the community and hearing things. But early on, there wasn't anybody that I remember. Okay, so in my elite status, you might know him. I think my first hero, and I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on a live show ever before. My first hero was a guy named Dave Heckler. Do you remember that guy's name?
Yeah, I know the name.
You know Dave?
Mm-hmm. I don't know him, but I know the name.
You know of him. He's from your area.
Yeah.
And he's a little older than me. So he's probably 10 years older than you.
Mm-hmm.
But he's from your area.
Yeah.
And when I was coming up 13, 14, 15, he was coming up, and I think he was 9. So he might be 5 years older than me. But he was like 19 or 20, and he was giving all the top guys at that time trouble. And I knew him. And I don't know if we were friends because I was a kid, but I looked up to him. Dave Heckler. He was my first. And ironically, I fought him at the US Open one year when I was 15.
Oh, wow.
And I beat him.
Really?
That was a huge deal for me personally. So after Dave, and my fandom of him never waned just because I beat him. I still, when you have, at least for me, when you have idols when you're younger, they stay where they are always.
Mhm.
Right? It's like, okay, this is this person. And then after that, I think it was, so Neil Adams was a thing, although I didn't know him, and it was just he was somebody in the ether.
Mhm.
I think I liked his name. Mike Swain was another. Obviously, he was a superstar when we were growing up, right?
Yeah.
Already.
Mhm.
And there was a few other guys in there, but I think it was Swain was the next. And then I became a teammate of his, which was awesome. And I got to work out with him. I remember one of the, you might have been there. Oh, no, actually, you were too young. So when I was 17, I got invited to one of the training camps for the '84 Olympic team. And Swain, and then I learned of a guy named Brett Barron. You ever hear of him?
Oh yeah.
He had a cool name, another cool name. So even though he was in my division, I was uh, enamored with him because he was the Olympian. And every chance I got, I ran out to get those guys to, because they line the Olympic team up, and then they don't pick rounds. You just run out to get them.
Mhm.
So I was the first one out to get those two guys, like those two, because I was in that range of weight class. So I was getting Swain and Brett as much as possible, to a point where I remember Swain waved me off one time because he was tired of dealing with me. Not as a person. I don't remember exactly, but I know those guys were struggling with me,
Mhm.
both of them. So they were like, okay, I've had enough of you. And that was a big deal for me.
Yeah,
So those are the guys
that's pretty cool.
early on. Those are the judo guys. I mean, I had a lot of other people that I was a John McEnroe fan. I was a Ken Stabler fan, early Raiders. I had Larry Bird. I watched him religiously. I had a lot of other sports people that I followed, that I patterned my, not on purpose. It was organic.
Mhm.
Those guys all trained their asses off, especially Larry Bird. So I emulated. I liked trying to be like him.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of people wanted to be like him, that's for sure. He was legendary with his work ethic and his, especially his trash talking, which is, you ever see like the videos of him?
Oh, of course. I mean, you love that now, right? So back in the day, you didn't know that,
Mhm.
because I mean that there's no YouTube, there's no review of that, the trash talking. That only came out later.
Yeah. And the
Now,
guys
of course, I love it.
those guys are reminiscing about the stuff he would say. It's hilarious. Oh man, well, this was great. I really appreciate I do have one question, more of a personal question. I was always curious. You wrestled at Syracuse. When you wrestled there, were you doing judo at all, or were you just doing wrestling?
Good question. So I tried a few times, not very often. I put a geese on those guys, on my teammates, and try to do some throws, a little randori, but not often. But I still was competing internationally while I was at Syracuse, and I wasn't at Syracuse a very long time. I didn't graduate. I didn't go the whole time.
Mhm.
And that's a whole nother, if you ever want to get into that, that's a whole, my wrestling arc is a whole nother kind of interesting story. But so I wasn't there a ton of time, but while I was at Syracuse, I still competed. So I traveled. Sometimes I missed wrestling tournaments, which of course didn't sit well with the wrestling hierarchy, but that was the deal I made before I went.
Mhm.
I mean, I thought I was Tom Brady going to, or better yet, not Tom Brady, but somebody like Andrew Luck, or somebody that was already good going in. So I made Eli Manning. Remember when Eli Manning didn't play for the Chargers and
Yeah.
then he went to the Giants? So basically, when I was at Syracuse, I called the shots
Mhm.
arrogantly, but I understood what I was doing to a degree. But if I completely understood, I wouldn't have done wrestling. Or I wouldn't have gone to school for wrestling. I would have figured out a different way to, but there was no paths for that for judo. There still is not a clear path unless somehow you stumble on a Jason Morris or a Jimmy Pedro or whatever. You're not going to find a path to do the training properly. You end up training in your garage. You don't know any better. You go to a camp here and there, and then you're on the tour.
Right.
And you're not anywhere near your potential. And again, you don't know what you don't know. You know, being on the tour, oh, I made it. No, you didn't make anything. You happen to own a gi and you fought in a tournament, right? When you're competitive in those tournaments, then you can say you've made it.
Yeah.
So, what was the question in the beginning? You're talking about the
Yeah,
wrestling?
I was just wondering like how you negotiated wrestling in
Oh yeah.
college and doing judo. And so you basically wrestled in college and then you went to the tournaments when they were available to go to.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. In fact, that was the challenge, was negotiating the judo through while I was still wrestling. And ultimately that's what took me away from Syracuse. Was, again, looking at big pictures, understanding what, you know, as you age, you learn things, realizing, okay, this is not my future. I'm not going to be a student, get a business degree and use that. And I'm also not going to be a wrestler. I could have been, but I would have had to have taken that path and cut the judo out. I mean, I was a judo player. I mean, I only started wrestling in 10th grade. I don't know if you know that part, but wrestling was a very small pocket in my existence. But my judo translated well to no-gi. And that was just pure chance.
Yeah.
That wasn't something I designed, you know, when I'm 13, 14 years old. The judo that I was having, you know, with all my, you've seen the wrestling clips of all the sweeps and the entwine the leg thing like Cabarelli used to do.
Yeah, I sent you one. I found it on YouTube, and I was like, boy, whoever put that together did a good job.
Oh, right, that thing.
Yeah, that was pretty good job. That whoever put that together was good. But yeah, that was all those throws and stuff, pretty neat.
Hey, so before we end, I want to introduce you to my tech. This is Nicole Stout.
Hi, okay, Nicole, you're doing a great job with the tech stuff.
She's the one who set all this up, and you didn't notice, Dave, but look at the background.
It's I noticed. Yeah.
Oh, you did?
Is that like a background? That's a virtual background, right?
Yeah. It's a green screen thing, but it was green before. Now it's purple.
Oh, okay.
You didn't notice that?
No, I didn't. No,
we tricked you.
Oh man, that's I tell you what. Actually, I like it. I like better purple. The purple's better.
So
there you go. That purple's better.
Yeah.
Well, hey, you know what? That gives me an idea for this podcast. I'm gonna check that out and see if I can get me a green screen as well. So that's good. That's great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
But so, anyways, this is Nicole Stout. She fights 78 kilos, and she's the number one in the U.S. And she's going for when nationals, I believe, the 25th of May, and she'll be going for her 4th straight title.
Oh wow! Congratulations! That's great. It's really nice to meet you.
Hi.
Hey, are you guys coming to Pittsburgh for the junior nationals?